Good Thursday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock and time for Sports4CLE. The Browns wrapping up mandatory minicamp out in Berea. Up next, training camp, and it gets underway a little over a month, about 6 weeks, July 22nd. They will convene in Greenbrier, West Virginia, to get ready for that Hall of Fame game, the first exhibition game of the season. Let's head out to Berea, take a look at the final minicamp workout. Browns out on the field, stretching. Running backs getting in some drills. Jerome Ford, Demetric Felton. Deshaun Watson back throwing and looking pretty good again. That time, David Njoku. Here he finds Harrison Bryant. And this time a little up and out by Donovan Peoples-Jones, making the adjustment and making the grab. Again, Deshaun Watson looking pretty good, throwing the football around. Granted, 7-on-7, not in pads, not a lot of pressure, but you would much rather have him look good as opposed to the alternative. Mike Florio, Chris Sims on Pro Football Talk, NBC Sports, talking about what to expect from Deshaun Watson this year.
I think it's just a matter of time here before Deshaun Watson. I really expect him to jump back into the top 5-ish, 6-ish conversation in football this year when it's all said and done.
And when you consider the guys in the top 5, top 6, that's saying a lot. Yeah. And if he does that, the Browns are going to be better. And the Browns are that team in the AFC that we just look at them and say, what are they going to be? We don't know what they're going to be. They could be that team that just comes out of the gates and takes off, and we're like, wow, we should have seen this one coming.
There's some things there.
I don't think they're going to be bad.
Right.
They're either going to be middle of the pack or they're going to be great.
Right.
And if Deshaun Watson can be the guy that he was 2020,
watch out.
Better make room at the table for the Browns.
That's right. Watch out. Watch out. You look at them and you go, man, there's a lot of talent on defense. We know that. They can fly around, right? And they got a new defensive coordinator. I think there'll be a bump up. We know that O-line's still real. Nick Chubb's still one of the best backs in football. Tight ends, good. Receivers are pretty good, right? They got a lot of everything there, and I'm betting that a full offseason of Watson and them getting comfortable with what he does and him getting comfortable there in Cleveland, that we're going to see the superstar back at it again.
Let's welcome in Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Quincy, is it a coincidence that the more we see Deshaun Watson on the field throwing the football, the more we hear the national folks expecting him to get back to close to what he was in 2020?
I think we all knew that this was going to be kind of a possibility with Deshaun Watson, right? Where some people I think there was a pocket of people who kind of just hoped it went away, so they didn't have to talk about it anymore. But he's 26 when he got traded for. He's like 27 right now. The thought that Deshaun Watson was going to suddenly lose his football powers because he didn't play football for 700 days and had a couple bad games, I thought was kind of ridiculous from the start. And they're seeing more and more evidence that it's like, okay, it looks like he's going to be back to who he was. And when you go back and you remember who he was, this is somebody who, Dave, one of the most impressive stats from his 2020 season is he had 4,800 passing yards, right? We all know that. He was first in the league in that, and that was great. He got a passing championship. He averaged 8.9 yards per attempt on those passes, and he only had 564. Right now, if you're a top 15 quarterback in attempts, you get 640. If you average those numbers out, you can see how ridiculous those numbers could have gotten if he just had a better defense to get him the ball more in Houston that year. So, yeah, people are remembering, and conveniently so, that Deshaun Watson's really good at quarterback, because I think they're seeing the writings on the wall. It's not going to be a good idea to take this into the season where you're like, oh, Deshaun's just done. You're not seeing that a lot anymore.
No, and hearing him talk, you kind of, I like the fact he feels like he's got something to prove, and a talented guy who feels like he has something to prove. Always a dangerous combination for people that have to go up against him.
I mean, talented guy with the talent around him too, right? A good offensive line. If this were 2021, and let's say he never sits out, and you put this roster around him in Houston, we're talking about this team very differently, right? If we're not trying to factor in, oh, is he back? Will he be back to 2020 form? Will he play as good? If we're just having him come off of that season, put this around him, we're talking about a team that would be a Super Bowl contender, right? It's only the 2-year layaway that gives anybody hesitance on this, and the more evidence you see that he's going to be similar, if not better, because he's reaching his athletic prime, especially with quarterbacks, they tend to like get to their best at like 28, 29 when like the mental and the physical match up. And then you can see where this team can go.
All right. Mary Kay Cabot tweets this out. Deshaun Watson still wants DeAndre Hopkins, but it's a long shot for now. No free agent visit to the Browns is scheduled, and they're not looking to add a big-name wide receiver. That also kind of dovetails into Hopkins expected to visit with the Titans. That's a team that has Treylon Burks, not much else at wide receiver on Sunday, so we'll see how that goes. Quincy, I know you've addressed this. Are the Browns wide receivers, is that room as currently constructed good enough?
I think it'd be fine if they're, say, relatively healthy, and they have all the pieces that they kind of need there, and I think Deshaun feels pretty good about it. So I don't think that you need to add a bunch of names here, but it would be nice. Like, I think wide receiver is also one of those positions where, hey, man, having another name doesn't hurt, right? You know, you look at the Rams and their Super Bowl run. They had a great wide receiving room to start the season, right? They had Robert Woods, they had Cooper Kupp, then they got Odell Beckham. People talk about when Odell Beckham signed over there, he might be the 3rd or 4th wide receiver. Then all of a sudden you get to the Super Bowl and attrition made it so that Odell Beckham was your number 2 receiver. Attrition happens at that position. So what you have at the beginning of the year is not necessarily reflective of what you'll have at the end of the year. And I think that's why people want to add more names, and you want that depth there. And DeAndre Hopkins would make us feel like we're going to be depth-proof. But if they stay relatively healthy, I think there shouldn't be a problem with this receiving room.
Well, one thing that will be, the Browns offense is going to have to get used to Deshaun Watson playing quarterback. Kevin Stefanski talked about that earlier this week.
Yeah, that's something we've talked about. I mean, it was something certainly we saw last season. Deshaun has the ability to extend plays, and when those times come up, it's really incumbent on all 10 other guys out there to stay alive, and that may be the receivers getting open. That's got to be the offensive line when they're blocking. The play's never over until that whistle blows, and Deshaun does have that unique ability that he's shown his whole life to extend plays.
And Quincy, I play that because I know you've addressed this as well. Why do you think Watson got sacked so much? How do you fix it?
Well, I mean, Joe Burrow has an interesting quote on this, right, where he's like, it's an overrated negative stat against the offense. And to a point, I do think he's correct, because if he's holding that ball and he gets sacked, just because he gets sacked doesn't mean that's bad. Now, the context of the sack is everything. What was the down and distance created? What did you miss out on? How did the sack happen? And I think a lot of people looked at that sack number for Deshaun and kind of freaked out when it's like, hey, the sack numbers are pretty neutral for the first 3 games. And then the last 2 games, it kind of exploded because of a number of factors. There were a couple injuries on the offensive line that did not help things. The Browns also fell behind in those games where those sack numbers exploded. So they needed to make more plays, and Deshaun needed to hold the ball longer to make those plays happen. And I think that's kind of what added up to this whole thing. And also, just Deshaun's going to take some sacks. Like, it's okay. It doesn't mean your offensive line is terrible. It doesn't mean that somebody needs to be fired. He's probably going to take a decent amount of sacks, the same way that Joe Burrow takes a decent amount of sacks. But the Cincinnati Bengals found a way to win 12 games. And I feel like our offensive line is better than the Cincinnati Bengals. So I think that the sacks are going to be something that if you want to be a pessimist or cynical about the Browns, even if they're having success this year, you can point to. But I don't know if that's necessarily the best marker about where this Browns offense will be with them, because Deshaun's style, and he's going to be the reason to take some sacks. But I think that's not always a bad thing, because he can make some great plays. And sometimes something is a sack, but it's like a 1-yard loss. I don't really care about that, right? We don't really worry about Nick Chubb taking 1-yard losses every once in a while. It should be the same way with the quarterback.
Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. plus reason for optimism that the Browns can get where they want to go. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, it's Mike down in West Virginia. It definitely looks like Haslam's doing whatever he can to try to put a winner on the field, and no doubt Deshaun Watson was Jimmy Haslam's pick. That $230 million guarantee was obviously Haslam's call. But what I have noticed, next year, we're going to get hit hard on the cap. What I've been watching, this DTR guy that we drafted in the 5th round is very intriguing to watch. His skill set is almost identical to Patrick Mahomes. He has a cannon for an arm. He's got very good wheels, and he played a lot of college football. Me personally, I think we're all in this year with Deshaun Watson and every weapon we can possibly get him. But if Deshaun Watson does not prove that he is a top 3 or 4 quarterback this year, it would not surprise me a bit if Jimmy Haslam doesn't pull the plug on Deshaun Watson and eat the rest of that contract. And if they're developing DTR behind the scenes, if he's showing promise similar to one of the top-tier quarterbacks, they would go with him on a rookie deal and still be able to keep all that talent.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Quincy, I think he's looked just fine. I don't think there's any way they're maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the road. Not next year, not the year after that. Again, he does have a similar skill set to Watson, but let's let him develop a little bit.
Y'all do this to me on purpose, don't y'all? Y'all do this to me on purpose. You know what I mean? I'm supposed to have a regular reaction to that. I don't know how. Like, you just compared DTR to Pat Mahomes. DTR, who was drafted in the 5th round. In the 5th round. He said he played a lot of college football. I promise you, DTR's skill set was anyway similar to Pat Mahomes. He would not have played a lot of college football. You know what I mean? He would have been. You know who's who's similar to Pat Mahomes? Anthony Richardson. You know who didn't have to play that much college football? Anthony Richardson. I'm just gonna say, he's a 5th round pick. It's okay to be excited about DTR. Let's see him hit the practice field first before we even think about Pat Mahomes. Can we compare him to Josh Dobbs first? Can we do Josh Dobbs? Like, can we go through steps? You know what I mean? Like, you can't just go straight to Pat Mahomes. That's not, no. Stop it.
All right. Let's take a look. This reason for optimism for the Browns is from Pro Football Focus. For the Browns, it has to get better, right? Deshaun Watson posted career lows, passing grade 54.2, adjusted completion percentage 71.8, big-time throw percentage 1.7%, turnover-worthy play percentage 4.1%. In theory, Watson shouldn't be that bad again, and the rest of the roster is primed for a playoff berth. The other thing is, Quincy, and we've pointed this out earlier this week, as poorly as people want to say Deshaun Watson played, he was 3-3. It's not like he went 0-6. They still won 3 games, and the roster's better.
Yeah, and people talk about, like, him beating the Ravens, like, oh man, he beat a Lamar-less Raven team. It's like, okay, but Lamar don't play defense. You know who plays defense? Everybody else on the Ravens. And you know who is still playing defense versus Lamar Jackson? Everybody else on the Ravens. And you know what defense almost beat the Cincinnati Bengals? With Tyler Huntley. The Baltimore Ravens, right? Like there were glimpses of the old Deshaun in those 6 games. There were glimpses of a rusty Deshaun in those 6 games. That's just what it was. It was a mixed bag, and that's just how it was, and that's just what the situation was. And I don't know. People try to make it seem like it was just all bad when he was out there. Go back and watch the highlight tape for a dude who played as bad as some people are saying. It's like, God, it's the most impressive highlight tape I've ever seen from a Cleveland Browns quarterback. And that's when he was playing very much below expectation. So that just tells you how high the bar is set for Deshaun Watson.
All right, NFL teams most likely to go from worst to first in their division. This is from Pro Football Focus. Number 1, they say the Jets. Number 2, the Browns. Their hopes of going worst to first hinge on whether Deshaun Watson can get back to the level of play he showcased before his suspension. Watson's 92.5 grade, 3rd best among quarterbacks in 2022, but his 55.3 mark last year, 32nd among players at that position. See our comments from earlier. Again, the AFC North, it's going to be tough to win. The AFC North is loaded.
Yeah, I mean, it's always tough to win, even when it's not loaded, just because we are a unique division where every team in the division is a legitimate rival versus the other team. Like, remember when they asked Deshaun Watson, hey, who was your rival when you were in Houston? He had no answer for that because the AFC South's not one with not a division with a ton of rivalries, and especially if you're the Texans. But if you're the Browns, I mean, like, even if the Bengals have a bad year, they're still going to play very hard against you. Even if the Steelers have a bad year, they're still going to play very hard against you. It's hard to win a division when you have 6 games on the schedule where you can literally throw out the records, right? That old cliche. You can throw out the records because it's a rivalry game. And that's legitimately the case. I mean, how many games has the Browns almost beat a superior team to them just because they're playing a rivalry game, right? It is what brings the records in this division down is because every game's a rivalry game in the AFC North. And then you have to play other teams on top of that.
So ESPN ranked all 32 teams based on their core 5, so their top 5 players. Number 1 was the Chiefs. Number 2, the Bengals. Number 3, the Eagles. Browns checked in at number 11. Ravens were 9, Browns 11. And their roster core, Deshaun Watson, Myles Garrett, Nick Chubb, Denzel Ward, Joel Bitonio. Average core age, 27.6. A few years ago, this group would have challenged for the number 1 spot in the rankings, but after Watson played so poorly in his return to football in 2022, fair to wonder if he holds the rest of the players on this list back going into 2023. 11th is probably fair. That puts him right in the middle of the playoff hunt. But again, the more you see of Deshaun Watson, and even nationally, as we talked about earlier, people are starting to, hey, the Browns could surprise some people.
Yeah, I mean, you can replace Deshaun Watson in that sentence, and it would be more accurate if you're like, hey, the quarterback position has been what's held this group of players back, right? It's always been, hey, you got Myles, you got Denzel, you got Nick Chubb, you got this and that. But the quarterback, right? That's always been the question. And it was but the quarterback with Baker Mayfield, and it was but who's going to play quarterback while Deshaun's suspended, and now it's but is Deshaun going to look like Deshaun? And if that question is answered early in the season, then there's nothing holding back that core of players because they do belong in the top levels of young players, especially in the NFL. So that's been the question for the Browns for the longest time, and this is what this year's going to answer because this is the best chance to know, is it really the quarterback holding these players back or are these players not as good as we think? We'll find out, this year because I don't think the quarterback should be the reason you don't have success this year or the reason that you're limited this year. You certainly paid a lot of money to make sure that's not the case.
A lot of money and a lot of draft capital as well. So, it's time for the results to show on the field. Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we turn our attention to the defense. We'll hear from Myles Garrett, Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Earlier this week, Myles Garrett was asked just how good this defensive line the Browns have assembled can be this year.
As far as we want to take it, I think the guys that we have are very talented in many ways, and there's a lot of different skill sets that we have on the D-line. But you have a lot of guys who have just been waiting on this opportunity that we have to, this freedom that we've been given. I know Schwartz likes to say, take off the seatbelt. So, I think that's really the mindset. You get out there and you're just letting it loose. Don't worry about all these rules and doing all this. As soon as you know your assignment, after that you get off the ball and FSU, get to the ball.
Myles, with this being the first time we've talked to you since Darius got here, what was your reaction when you saw news about that trade?
I was happy. At first I was like, I don't believe TMZ. But when I heard it from my dad, I was like, all right, now I can believe it. So I was excited. I let myself be happy. I was like, I'm a little bit cautiously optimistic.
And Quincy, all of the defensive guys are looking forward to not having as many rules on the defensive side of the ball. That seems to be universal.
Yeah, they might have been in a little bit of an overcomplicated system last year. It seems like they just kind of want to go out there and play football, right? Like this is kind of what they want to do instead of having to make sure that everybody's in the right spot. So that's something interesting that Myles said right there.
Yeah, it's almost like they didn't know math was going to be on the defensive test there. All right, Rodney McLeod has some familiarity with Jim Schwartz, played with him on the Super Bowl winning team for the Eagles. He talked about Jim Schwartz and this system.
Jim's he probably is the smartest in the building, to be honest, outside of myself. But no, he knows so much, and I think what I love most about Jim is he's a genuine guy. He really cares about each player. He invests in us and getting to know us. And I think when he does challenge you, and in those moments, it's coming from a good place. And so he is a talker. He shares a lot of stories, but it's all because he cares. And I'm glad to be back with him this year.
How much can you help the other guys, especially in secondary, since you're so familiar with this defense?
Yeah, I've been dropping a lot of knowledge on them just over my time being with Jim, 5 years in Philly, and trying to help them, get up to speed a lot quicker. And that's what I can, bring to this team outside of, my abilities on the field and leadership, but it's also the knowledge of the scheme and helping guys out in that way so that, kind of share a lot of insight.
Because the thing that I found most interesting about that, is him saying, even when he gets after you, you know it's coming from a good place. That's the sign of a really good coach.
Yeah, he's saying what I would expect him to say. I mean, this is somebody who has a great relationship with Jim Schwartz, has worked with him for a very long time. It'll be interesting to see how guys, like I know Rodney's going to be fine with them during the season, but it'll be interesting to see if Jim's able to make sure and get that connection with the guys that he's new with, especially the younger guys on this team throughout the season. When things do go wrong, he does have to make a correction. That's why I'm really interested in seeing, because it's one thing to have it with somebody you've known for a while. It's another thing when you got these guys coming in the league now, 21, 22. You've been out the league for a couple of years, not as a defensive coordinator because of some health issues. Let's see how you connect with those guys. So I think that's important that he has that. Let's also see if he has it still.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, this is from Pro Football Focus, NFL safety rankings. The aforementioned Rodney McLeod ranked 23rd. League-leading 90.9 zone coverage grade, figures to fit in a defensive coordinator. Jim Schwartz's scheme is the attempts to improve Cleveland's secondary that struggled mightily in 2022. Interestingly enough, Juan Thornhill was not on the top 25. So take it for what it's worth, but McLeod there in the top 25.
Man. Yeah, I think he's going to be a nice, interesting piece. I think he's going to be what we wanted Ronnie Harrison to be for so long on this defense. And I think he's also going to be helpful from a standpoint of he's somebody who who understands Jim Schwartz, understands how he communicates, and can help the rest of the locker room communicate with him.
All right. I know you've addressed this in your video as well, Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Real expectations for the Browns defense.
Yeah, because every time we talk about expectations, it's like an ideal, right? It's not necessarily like a real thing of expectations, because we just want this defense to feel like it's good, not necessarily what we want to see to know that they will reach what we want them to reach. So I had some things where mainly when you look at the expectations, it's like quarterback hits need to take a significant jump. Tackle for loss, that needs to take a significant jump. Sacks, they had 34 team sacks last year. I don't need to tell you how awful that is. It was Myles Garrett for 16, and then who knows who had to rest. But 34 team sacks, they need to get that up to 44, right? That's a plus 10 increase of that. Between Myles and Za'Darius, I hope they get 30 sacks combined. So they got to find a way to get that. Quarterback hits, they were one of the worst in the league at getting quarterback hits last year. They need to go up 34 just to be normal, right? 100 quarterback hits is what I want them to do this year. That would be in the middle of the league just to get to average. And I think this was the big through line in that video, was a lot of these numbers just to get to average, the Browns have to take a significant leap, right? So that's why I'm a little hesitant to be like, this is going to be a top 10 defense. It's going to be a top 5 defense, because they're fixing some things. The potential is there, but the leap is so drastic from the year before that I can't expect it to just change like that. It would be like one of the biggest leaps in NFL history, but they can still make the ground to get to average, and they did get the average with this offense. I think they're going to be a very good team.
Another topic that you've addressed in your videos. Do you think they should add another defensive lineman? You keep hearing they might need another D-tackle. Just your thoughts on that.
I mean, hey, look, if they want to get one, it's kind of the clock's ticking, right? Frank Clark just went. A bunch of guys are just now going. It seems like that market is heating up again. So if they were interested in one, I think this week would be the time to go get him. I know Matt Iadinas is somebody who would be interesting. I thought Frank Clark would also be somebody who would be interested in Leonard Floyd, but those two guys are gone. They're off the market. So if the Browns want to add another name, and I don't know if they do, the urgency certainly doesn't seem to be there. This is the time to do it.
Yeah, Clark reportedly agreeing to terms with the Broncos. So along those lines, this is from Dog Pound Daily, 3 free agent defensive tackles the Browns could target. Number 3, you mentioned him, Matt Ioannidis. Number 2, Michael Brockers. And number 1, Shelby Harris. I don't know that they're going to necessarily do that. They may. But again, it's going to be a matter of, does the market fall to them at a price Andrew Berry's really comfortable with?
Yeah, and after Matt Iadinas, it's like, are you just adding names to add a name? Like, or are you adding a name because he fills a specific function for this defense, right? Because Michael Brockers and Shelby Harris, I mean, that's about the same as a bet as the Browns signing Maurice Hurst. They already kind of signed the guy to fill that role. Iadinas is a little bit different because you know he's going to start. He's going to be a consistent piece of your rotation. All those other guys are gambles, and I don't think we need another gamble. We got enough gambles on that defensive line, right? We're gambling on Perrion Winfrey. We're gambling on Jordan Elliott. We're gambling on Maurice Hurst. We're gambling on this and that. We have enough gambles. So unless you got somebody who you feel like can fill a role and be more of a sure thing, I don't really see the benefit in going after some of those dudes on the list because I think it's more or less, let's just add a name to add a name.
Yeah, there are a number of guys that I'm sure, and keep in mind, Jim Schwartz is going to rotate them in much more frequently than they have in the past. So I'm with you. Quincy Carrier and I can step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll hear from Dalvin Tomlinson. Take a look at just how good the AFC North might be. Sports4CLE, I'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Peter Schrager from NFL Network's Good Morning Football, talking about the Browns relative to the rest of the NFL.
The Browns have as good a roster as just about anybody outside of Kansas City. You look up and down this roster. Chubb might be the best running back in the league. You know, Amari Cooper is a #1 wide receiver in this league. Myles Garrett might be the best defensive lineman in this league. They're loaded, and they added someone this offseason. Jim Schwartz, defensive coordinator.
Let's go.
I think it's kind of interesting. Schwartz has this great term that he talks about for his interior defensive lineman. He's looking for Ferraris, not dump trucks. And he wants to go. And remember, when they were in Philadelphia, when they were good then, in Detroit, he would have waves of different defensive linemen. They would just come. You look at this defensive lineman now. Dalvin Tomlinson. Obviously, you have now Zadarius Smith. You have Myles Garrett. They have waves and waves of guys. And if I look at Stefanski, hey, Coach of the Year a couple of years ago. Understandable. Things got a little weird the last 2 years. Well, obviously, the Watson thing is the giant shadow over all this stuff. But this, to me, look, as much as we're talking about the Jets and the Ravens and the Steelers are the teams that are going to go from not making the playoffs, Browns have no excuse either. They're really good. And they have a Coach of the Year as their coach. And they added Jim Schwartz, who is one of the great defensive masterminds of all time, who came back and said, yeah, I'll do it again. Let's go, one more ride. I don't know. Maybe we should be talking more about the Browns, but we haven't. And maybe that's just how they want it.
Quincy, when you think about it, I agree with him about the Browns relative to, I don't even know if I would say Kansas City's roster is ahead of theirs. Patrick Mahomes, yeah. I'll take that. Travis Kelce, absolutely.
Yeah, but that makes up a lot of ground.
Yeah, Travis Kelce, yeah. Those two, yeah, I got you. But defensively, and I know Pacheco's pretty good. But other than, the roster.
I mean, you can't apples to apple it, though. Like, that's where I'm at with it. Like, when you have Patrick Mahomes and you have Travis Kelce's like, yeah, the Bulls roster wasn't that cool. That wasn't that good. They just have Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. It's like, yeah, but outside of those two, does it matter? So it's one of those things. But like, yeah, they're not the most impressive roster. If you just look at it and you go, okay, with the quarterback position, you try to keep it all in the vacuum, but we know that the quarterback position kind of affects everything on the team. And when you have the best quarterback and arguably one of the better receivers, not even just tight ends in the game, then yeah, you're gonna do damage. And then also, like, hey, they got Chris Jones too, who's really, really good. He reminded us that during the AFC Championship game. But I do see what Peter's saying about the Browns, where he's saying the Browns not as good as a roster, and you can say they're about as evenly well placed a roster as anybody in the NFL. The big question, and I think the reason people are hesitant, is, hey, which Deshaun are we getting? Are we getting pre-2020 Deshaun good? Are we getting 2020 Deshaun good? Are we getting better than 2020? Or are we going to get what he was last year, right? That's the big question. That's been the question with the Cleveland Browns since about 2018. The roster's been fine, but we're worried about quarterback. It's kind of been a thing. When the quarterback plays good for the Browns over the last 4 or 5 years, the team's been good. When the quarterback play's been inconsistent, the team's been inconsistent. So that's going to be the biggest question for the Browns, and that's going to be why everybody's not so sure, because there's reason to not be sure about the quarterback until Deshaun Watson steps out there for 2023 and shows if he's the same guy that he used to be.
Now, the other question is the defense. Can Jim Schwartz turn it around? Dalvin Tomlinson talked about Schwartz and the energy he sees from the defensive coordinator on the field.
I had a few over the years, but Coach Schwartz takes it to a new level, I feel like. I feel like sometimes he might be the 12th man on the field.
Yeah, and just what are your early impressions of kind of his impact? And he said he wants his presence to be felt. That's kind
Most
of
definitely.
the method behind that.
Yeah, he definitely brings the energy for our defense. And, it's just the attitude he comes in, the energy he brings, just makes everybody that more amped up to go that much harder each day. I already know what Zadarius can do on the inside, and just watching Obo and Miles on film and, playing against him over the years and stuff like that, it's just with all of us together and bringing our different skill sets together, I feel like it's going to, I don't know how to put it into words. It's gonna be amazing.
And Quincy, that's the other thing, that they've kind of gotten guys with different skill sets, not only in the receiver room, but on the defensive line, which gives Jim Schwartz the ability to do a lot of things.
And I think one of the most important things that is good that we're hearing about Jim Schwartz is that energy, right? Oh, he's got all this energy. Because that was one of the things on why he had to kind of step down in Philadelphia, because he had a health issue. And you could see over the years, his energy just wasn't the same. He wasn't able to be the same level of coach that he was in years past. So it's nice to see he's healthy. It's nice to see that he has those things cleared up, because if he does, then we're talking about, a guy who was able to manufacture some of the better defensive fronts in his era. So it's really good to hear that from a health standpoint, that not only is he himself mentally, which he's always been, but also energy-wise, out there on the practice field. He has that same trademark Jim Schwartz energy that's led him to anchor a lot of good defenses.
Yeah, and the thing about having a guy that's been there, done that for so long, there's nothing in game that's going to happen that he hasn't seen and adjusted to before. So it'll be really interesting to see the in-game adjustments with him as well. Again, I know you've addressed this. How good do you think the AFC North is?
It's always a great question, right? Because every year it's going to be the greatest division on earth, and everybody's going to make the playoffs. And, last place might have 10 wins. And then the season ends, and we feel like every team was bad except for the Bengals, or except for or the Ravens, or whoever wins first place. But yeah, that's a good question, right? The Bengals, that's the one team I'm confident they're going to be good. The Steelers, that's the one team I'm confident are going to be limited. They're not going to be a bad team, but they're going to be limited, right? There's only so far you can go when you don't have a quarterback. The Browns and the Ravens, those are two teams where, like, hey, it's either going to be Valhalla or danger for one of these teams, right? Like, there's no in between. And when I look at the Ravens, one of the things I think is being under talked about with this team is like Todd Monken is getting a lot of benefit of the doubt, but the last 2 stops Todd Monken has had in his NFL career, they weren't good ones, right? Like we're giving him benefit of the doubt that he's just going to magically walk in there and make Lamar better. Also, let's talk about what Todd Monken is putting Lamar in a position to do, which is throw deep balls. And Lamar Jackson, I think he's an underrated passer in the pocket. But I don't think he excels as a deep ball thrower. I think when you see his big mistakes, they are when he's trying to throw the ball deep downfield. He's at his most inconsistent doing that. So you're asking somebody to play the worst aspect of their game. He's already mentioned he's not going to be as mobile this year, and that's the plan. Yeah, you got Odell, you got these guys, and I can see it going right, but I feel like I'm Chicken Little and I see the sky falling. I'm like, hey, y'all don't see this?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of things going unquestioned about the Baltimore Ravens right now that I think should be a little bit looked at with a little bit more skepticism. The Browns, on the other hand, they get all the healthy skepticism that they deserve because, one, it's the brand name, right? The Browns are just going to attract a level of skepticism because of what they've done or what they haven't done over the last 20 years. And then, there's not as much reason to give the benefit of the doubt, which sometimes is good because it allows you to be a little bit more skeptical and look at things and look at what you need to change. The Ravens, they're changing a lot, but nobody's really questioning some of this stuff. And I'm like, I think you're going to want to reevaluate that in week 6.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a bad place to reevaluate that.
Yeah, I'm with you. And Todd Monken's offenses have turned the ball over a lot in his last 2 stops.
This is a guy who openly quit on his last coach. Like, that's crazy. Remember what we heard was out there about the Todd Monken stuff and how he was like, oh, yeah, I don't even care. And Freddie Kitchens, this is not a situation or a guy that I would be like, oh, man, yeah, he's going to handle that professionally. That's going to be great. This is going to be perfect. There are some real questions with Todd Monken. It's like we all forgot why he had to go to Georgia. And it's like I never hear 2019 brought up. And I think he did a great job making sure nobody talks about that. But 2019's on him. 2018 in Tampa Bay, that's on him. Like, there was a reason he was available in the first place. So that's just a giant concern for me when I look at Baltimore. It's like, yeah, man, the defense is going to be great. They get a good offense there. Theoretically, I can see it happening, but I just don't know if Todd Monken's an upgrade to Greg Roman. I really don't, because what I have seen has not been better than Greg Roman. And with the Browns, like, again, we're wondering, hey, where's Deshaun going to be? We feel pretty good about it because what we've seen so far in minicamp, but that's going to be where the Browns hinge on. And honestly, I would rather have that bet than be betting on the Todd Monken system. And not because it's a bad bet. It's just like we're betting on Deshaun Watson to be good at football again. Like, I think that's a safer bet.
Quincy Carrier, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Quincy.
Yeah, have a good one.
All right, Quincy Carrier, make sure you check him out. Untitled, unfiltered Browns coverage, always really good stuff. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Tim Bielik from The Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports for CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rico. I just heard the news that the New York Jets are canceling their mandatory minicamp for this week due to having an extra preseason game, which is the Hall of Fame game. I'm happy that the Browns decided not to cancel their minicamp because I don't think they've earned that right to just be able to skip minicamp and skip workouts and crucial time together on the field. I'm not saying that the Jets have earned that right to skip, but that's not my team, so I'm not concerned how they handle their summer schedule. Now, I don't know if it's going to translate to more wins on the field for us or not, but I just feel like that was a wise decision by Stefanski to not cancel. How do you feel about that? Will it be beneficial to us, or in the grand scheme of things, does it really matter? Thanks.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Tim Bielik from cleveland.com, plain dealer. Tim, I think they need the extra week of practice. I think they need as many mini camps as they can have. I think if Kevin Stefanski had his way, he'd probably love to have them in pads a little bit. He's not going to say that. But the fact of the matter is the way that schedule starts, they've got to be ready to go week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. And they just have to start fast.
Yeah, no question about it. And it's not just, the schedule also. I mean, the defense has got a new scheme. Jim Schwartz has brought in a different look on the defense. Deshaun Watson, yesterday at practice was saying that, there's so much of this offense that's new, outside of the structure. There's so many other things that are new about it. So having these extra practices is just going to help, make the streamline things, build some chemistry, which we've seen at times to be problems for the Browns the past 2 seasons among the several problems. The one thing I can't agree with there with the voicemail is the idea that the Browns haven't earned the right to do that. Why the Jets are in the right to do that in the case? They had the same record, and if you remember correctly, it was about a 1 in 2,000 chance the Browns had to lose that game last year. So we'd be talking, about the Jets at 6-11 versus the Browns at 8-9. Probably wouldn't make the playoffs at 8-9, but still a slightly different story. And you would argue the Jets need the minicamp more than the Browns because Aaron Rodgers needs those extra reps with those receivers and to get used to playing with those guys and throwing to those guys for training camp. Because you see what the minicamp has looked like for the Browns. I mean, Deshaun Watson has looked great for the last few days. Elijah Moore looks like, he looks like kind of a gem that, has a chance to really break out here in Cleveland in 2023. So there's benefits to this mini camp. And, we'll see how it all plays out. But like you said, these extra practices, when you have so many new faces coming together, you're bringing in a new defense. And you have, like you said, this gauntlet and a half to start the season. The more work you can get in the beginning of the season, and especially if you can keep these guys healthy through all these practices, which is so difficult to do, it can't be anything but a positive. It puts you in a good position, I think, to win those games.
Yeah, you're going to and the Browns need to figure out what they need to change in the preseason to have different outcomes the first part of that regular season than they did the last couple of years. Deshaun Watson has looked really good. He talked about the offense being locked in and his confidence level.
That's just for anybody. If you stop doing something for so long, you just naturally lose that confidence because you haven't been playing at that level. So you forget, your body and your muscle memory forget how fast and how to, do things, but it never loses it. So whenever I got back on the field last year, I was building that confidence up, took a break, came back, tried to build it back up. But having this off season and being full throttle definitely have caught back up with me. So, just like I said before, just keep stacking the days. Everyone in that locker room, especially the receivers, the skill guys, the tight ends, even the running backs have been locked in. And, it starts with me. It starts with the quarterback room with me, Josh, Kellen, and DT. We got to come up here and lead the guys in the huddle, have that confidence, that energy. And as we do that, then the receiver's going to do that. And they know that everyone can get the ball. It don't matter who's in the game, Amari, Elijah, Mike Harley, anybody. If Till, if he's out there, he's able to get the ball. You got to be full speed, got to know what to do, and be ready to catch the ball when we come. So, it all starts with the quarterback position, and then it trickles down throughout the team.
And Tim, he was also asked, is he ready to say that he's knocked off the rust? And he said, no, he won't be ready to do that until regular season. So everything that I've seen, everything that I've heard leads me to believe his head's in the right spot, which is step one to getting where he wants to be.
Yeah, it seems like he's saying all the right things. And, based on the mini camp and how he's looked, especially on those highlights you see on Twitter, it looks like he's doing all the right things on the field. I think, obviously playing those 6 games, yeah, it didn't look good most of the time. You did see flashes, but by and large, it wasn't Deshaun Watson that we've been used to seeing throughout his career. And you could point to a ton of factors. You could point to the off-field issues, taking a toll on him, emotionally, whatever. You could point to just, being thrown in the middle of the season after your offense had been used to playing a certain way for 11 games. And, all of a sudden they have to change up the final 6 games of the season. And, how you play down the stretch of the season when you're essentially eliminated from the playoffs. So there was so much, I think, that went against Deshaun Watson that, it naturally showed on the field. And we have to remember, he is human. These guys are human. This is not Madden. So you have to understand that going in. But I think what helps Deshaun Watson is he's had those 6 games. He's seen full speed football again. And, the Browns have done a good job to really reload the offense and give him a lot of extra weapons to work with. He's apparently, based on things he said, he's had some suggestions of what the offense should look like going into 2023 and beyond. So I think he understands, what he has to do. And by and large, he could just focus on football and being the best version of himself that he can be. And, based on what you saw, those last couple seasons, Houston, particularly 2020, or like I said, if Deshaun Watson wasn't there, we're talking about a 1-win football team in 2020. If it wasn't for him putting up the numbers that he did, if he comes close to that, this Browns team really is in the mix for a playoff spot and maybe something more in the AFC.
Yeah, Kyle Brandt from NFL Network's Good Morning Football talking about what he thinks some folks are overlooking about Deshaun Watson.
The fact of the matter is he came back last year and played 6 games, and they were mostly against bad teams. They weren't very well watched. He didn't play very well. But they went 3-3, and that's how they ended the season. Instead of bringing up those clips and saying, look how bad he was, I think it's important at this point on the football field to remember what he was before. Before the world changed, before he changed. This is from 2020. He went 700 days, 700, between playing for the Texans and playing for the Browns. Imagine right now we leave the table today and we don't do another Good Morning Football show till May of 2025. Peter, it sounds like your dream. That's what Deshaun Watson did, 700 days. But I want you to look at these Texans highlights. This is the COVID season, empty stands. It was a terrible, terrible Texans team. They were 4-12. J.J. Watt walks off the field with Deshaun in the last game and tells him, I'm sorry we wasted one of your years of your prime. You know how good Deshaun Watson was that year? He was amazing. Amazing. You won't believe this. This is a forgotten thing. That year, passer rating, your efficiency, all that, number 1 stat for quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers was number 1 in the league. Yeah. Okay? He won the MVP that year. Jason McCourty, I'll go back at you. Yep. 31 other starters that year, full-time starters. Rodgers was 1. Where do you think Deshaun Watson ranked in passer rating on a 4-12 team?
Passer rating. 4-12. Yeah. You said he was really good. Yeah. I'll go 12th.
He was 2nd.
And Tim, that's, the reason. It's kind of interesting. The national people, after you have heard what's going on, how Deshaun Watson looks, you're starting to hear more and more of them thinking that he might get back to that 2020 level.
Yeah, and I think, the further we get away from the off-field situation that he had to deal with, I think, the better it's going to end up being for, when we kind of more understand what Deshaun Watson, the football player, was, prior to the end of the 2020 season. It's easy to forget, because he hasn't played in 2 years, that, he was 700 days removed between, NFL appearances, that this guy was seen as one of the great up-and-coming quarterbacks in the NFL, that he was approaching that Patrick Mahomes level, that, the one thing that what was keeping him from really, challenging Mahomes was the fact that the team around him was not very good, and it kept getting worse and worse throughout his career till 2020 when, obviously the talent of the roster just wasn't there anymore. So now you fast forward to 2023, he's got those 6 games under his belt. He's used to playing behind that offensive line. He's more used to Kevin Stefanski. He's now got all these extra receivers to work with, a more talented passing game to work with, an offense that should lean more towards the pass than it has, for the Browns in the past few seasons. Everything is aligned for the Browns to really, break through and have a good season. What that looks like, I don't know. What does Deshaun Watson look like? Houston Deshaun Watson, I don't know. But if he can approach that, I think that's what's kind of important. And it's, again, when you don't play for so long, it's easy to forget, how good he was, because it feels like a long time ago that, he was putting up those numbers.
Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take one last time out, other side of the break. We'll hear from a national guy that's looking forward to the Browns-Bengals matchups this season. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. The 33rd team made up of former NFL executives, player personnel guys. Jordan Vanek talking about why he's looking forward to the skill position matchups with the Bengals receivers and the Browns secondary.
Jamar Chase, he is helped by T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. But the interesting matchup, they are 1-3 against the Cleveland Browns in the last 2 years. And last year on the Pivot podcast, Jamar Chase mentioned how he doesn't think Denzel Ward's elite. He doesn't like anything going on in there. It's on site when they see him. So I am curious, with a Jim Schwartz defense that's going to come at you, you're not going to get that safety help that Joe Woods was giving you. How does Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, and Martin Emerson match up with this trio of wide receivers? This is going to be the first time that Burrow is going to get single high against this Browns team. Obviously, they got to protect him. They got to handle Myles Garrett. But when the ball is snapped, how physical are these guys going to be at the line of scrimmage? And then how many big plays is it going to cause with Jamar Chase getting that man-on-man coverage that he seeks? And Denzel Ward, he talked about the interception he had against them 2 years ago, which was on Chase, running a route that he read. So it's a matchup where the trash talk is there, divisional rivals, two teams have been going at it the last 2 years, and for whatever reason, the Browns have had the Bengals number. Let's see it this year in upcoming matchup.
And Tim, the thing that I'm curious is how they're going to block this defensive line. The Bengals' offensive line has not been good. I know they went out and addressed the left tackle. Good luck with the type of aggressiveness that this defensive line is going to bring. It's going to be different.
Yeah, I mean, they got Orlando Brown. Obviously, he's a very good left tackle, one of the more underrated left tackles I think in all of football. But then all of a sudden, the Browns counter that by trading for Zadarius Smith. So now, the Bengals have a better offensive line, and the Browns counter that by saying, well, you know what, here's, instead of one Pro Bowl defensive end, here's 2 Pro Bowl defensive ends. And Jim Schwartz, as creative as they come as far as, deploying defensive linemen, it's going to be fascinating what he does with that. And going back to what, Jordan Vanek was talking about, when it comes to, the Browns corners against the Bengals receivers, it's a big reason why the Browns match up better with the Bengals than everybody else in the AFC North does. I mean, for whatever reason, this defense has had Joe Burrow's number for the past couple seasons. And I think if you're going to match up with a team like this, as important as it is to have the pass rush, you need to have capable corners who can match up with each of those 3 top receivers the Bengals have: Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. And it's clear, especially from last season, how well Martin Emerson kind of fits in as a bigger guy. And Denzel Ward, we know his prowess as a corner. Greg Newsome, I expect, will, continue to progress into his 3rd season. You have 3 highly talented corners against 3 highly talented receivers. I know Jamar Chase is one of the best receivers in football, and there's only so much you're going to be able to do against that. But, outside of that second matchup against the Bengals, and where I think, the injuries to Boyd and Higgins kind of had the Browns defensive game plan a little discombobulated, by and large, Denzel Ward has done a very good job against Jamar Chase in those previous matchups. So, yeah, that's what I think everybody who's watching that game should be really watching is, how those battles shake out, on the perimeter.
All right, before we go, Kevin Stefanski talked about why the Browns are headed out to Greenbrier, West Virginia, to start training camp that first week before the Hall of Fame game.
I think the Greenbrier will be an opportunity for us to get away, get away from town and get under the same roof together and hopefully there's no cell phone service, that type of thing. So it just allows you to just be around your team and really focus on the work. I mean, we're down there, I think, for 8 nights. And it, as we've talked about with that Hall of Fame game, really gives us an opportunity to lengthen our runway into the season. So we're going to make each one of those days count. But excited to just be down there together. And then we'll get back up here and have plenty more work to do and have an opportunity to get in front of our fans.
Tim, I like the idea. When I heard it, I said, yep, they should do that.
Yeah, chemistry clearly matters, and I think that's something when you look at the Browns' past couple seasons, that's something they've lacked, as far as just team bonding and whatever. And when you get, you take those 90 guys away from the facility, you put them together, in the Greenbrier for a week plus, I don't think you can really get anything but benefits out of that. Just good to get the guys together, and, give them the opportunity to really kind of grow and work together in their own isolated area. And Stefanski is a guy who's big about the work, which again goes back to, what we were talking about at the beginning, when it came on about the Browns still having the mini camp, while the Jets decided to cancel theirs. Is clear, he's valuing the work and, getting these guys together, getting them away from the fans. I mean, it's not always, you don't really see a lot of teams do that, obviously, the start of camp, but I think for the Browns, just a chance to build some team bonding. And like you said, just with the gauntlet of the first part of the schedule coming up, I don't think they can afford to take any chances. You got to hit the ground running to, at the very minimum, get yourself into the bye at 500. If you can get in the bye at 3-1, possibly winning 2 of those division games, I mean, that puts you in a great position. So clearly doing everything they can to give themselves a shot at doing that.
Tim Bielik, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
All right, Tim Bielik, make sure you check him out, cleveland.com, as well as The Plain Dealer. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.